When a former president steps up to the podium and declares that the United States military has never fought to win since World War II, it's a statement that demands attention. It's bold, controversial, and challenges decades of military doctrine, political decisions, and public perception. President Donald Trump's recent remarks, made as he signed an order rebranding the Defense Department as the Department of War, have reignited a fierce debate about America's approach to warfare, its political culture, and the very definition of victory in modern conflicts. To understand the weight of Trump's claim, we need to rewind to the mid-20th century. World War II was a conflict unlike any other in American history, a total war that mobilized the entire nation, demanded unprecedented sacrifice, and ended with a clear, decisive victory. The Axis powers were defeated, and the United States emerged as a global superpower. Victory was unambiguous, and the military's mission was clear: win the war at all costs. But since then, the story has been far more complicated. The Korean War ended in a stalemate. Vietnam was a quagmire that left deep scars on the American psyche. Conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan have dragged on for years, with shifting objectives and ambiguous outcomes. The Cold War was won not on the battlefield, but through a complex mix of diplomacy, economic pressure, and strategic deterrence. And in recent years, the US has engaged in numerous smaller conflicts, counterterrorism operations, and peacekeeping missions, often with mixed results. Trump's assertion that the military could have won every war but chose not to because of political correctness strikes at the heart of this complexity. It suggests that the US has the capability to achieve clear victories but has been held back by cultural and political constraints. This framing invites us to ask, what does it mean to fight to win? And how have political considerations shaped military strategy and outcomes? To unpack this, we need to explore several layers: the evolution of American military doctrine, the influence of political leadership and public opinion, the changing nature of warfare itself, and the role of cultural values in shaping military decisions. The first, consider the evolution of military doctrine. After World War II, the US military shifted from total war to a strategy focused on deterrence and containment, especially during the Cold War. The threat of nuclear annihilation meant that direct, large-scale conflict with the Soviet Union was avoided. Instead, proxy wars and limited engagements became the norm. This wasn't necessarily a failure to fight to win, but a strategic choice to prevent global catastrophe. Then there's the impact of political leadership. Presidents and their administrations have often had to balance military objectives with diplomatic goals, public opinion, and international alliances. The Vietnam War, for example, was deeply influenced by fears of communism spreading in Southeast Asia, but also by growing anti-war sentiment at home. Political leaders faced immense pressure to limit casualties and avoid escalation, which in turn affected military tactics and strategy. Public opinion itself plays a crucial role. Democracies like the US rely on public support for military engagements. When that support wanes, political leaders may be forced to withdraw or limit operations, even if military commanders believe victory is within reach. This dynamic creates a tension between military goals and political realities. The nature of warfare has also changed dramatically. Modern conflicts often involve asymmetric warfare, insurgencies, and non-state actors. Winning a conventional battle doesn't necessarily translate to winning the broader conflict. Success is harder to define when the enemy is elusive, and the battlefield is as much about hearts and minds as it is about territory. Finally, cultural values and political correctness come into play. Trump's critique suggests that sensitivity to political correctness has hampered military effectiveness. This is a contentious point. On one hand, respecting human rights, adhering to international law, and maintaining ethical standards are essential for legitimacy and long-term success. On the other hand, some argue that excessive caution and concern for political optics can limit military options and prolong conflicts. So, when Trump says the US military has never fought to win, he's not just making a historical claim, he's challenging the entire framework through which America approaches war. He's calling for a reassessment of priorities, a rejection of what he sees as political constraints, and a return to a more aggressive, victory-focused mindset. But is this perspective accurate? And what would it mean in practice? To answer these questions, we need to look at specific conflicts and decisions. Take the Korean War, often called the Forgotten War. It ended in an armistice rather than a clear victory. Was this a failure to fight to win, or a strategic decision to avoid a wider war with China and the Soviet Union? Similarly, Vietnam was a complex conflict with deep political and social ramifications. The U.S. military achieved many tactical victories, but the war was lost politically and socially at home. In Iraq and Afghanistan, the challenges have been even more pronounced. The initial invasions were swift and decisive, but the subsequent nation-building efforts and counterinsurgency campaigns have been fraught with difficulties. Political will, shifting objectives, and cultural misunderstandings have all played roles in the protracted nature of these conflicts. 2. Trump's call to recognize the Defense Department as the Department of War is symbolic. It signals a desire to strip away what he sees as unnecessary political constraints and focus on military strength and victory. But it also raises questions about the balance between military power and civilian oversight, the role of diplomacy, and the costs of war. 2. And E4. The general public, this debate touches on fundamental questions about America's role in the world, the price of war, and the values that guide national security policy. For military experts, it challenges assumptions about doctrine, strategy, and the complex realities of modern conflict. So, in the end, Trump's statement is a provocative invitation to rethink how the U.S. fights wars, what victory means, and how political and cultural factors shape military outcomes. It's a conversation that will continue to resonate as America faces new challenges on the global stage. To truly grasp the implications of President Trump's assertion, it's essential to delve deeper into the concept of fighting to win and how it has evolved in the context of American military engagements since World War II. The phrase itself carries a powerful connotation of absolute commitment, unambiguous objectives, and decisive outcomes. But the reality of modern warfare, especially for a superpower like the United States, is far more nuanced. 2. Victory in war is rarely as straightforward as it was in 1945. The nature of conflict has shifted from large-scale, state-on-state wars to complex, multifaceted engagements involving insurgencies, terrorism, cyber warfare, and hybrid threats. These new forms of conflict challenge traditional definitions of winning and losing. For example, in counterinsurgency operations, success might mean stabilizing a region, winning the support of the local population, or preventing the enemy from gaining influence objectives that are difficult to measure and often take years to achieve. 2. This complexity is at the heart of the debate sparked by Trump's remarks. When he claims the U.S. military never fought to win, he is critiquing what he sees as a lack of decisive action and a failure to pursue clear, achievable goals. But many military strategists argue that the U.S. has in fact adapted its approach to fit the realities of modern conflict, where outright victory is often elusive and the costs of prolonged warfare are high. Take the example of the Gulf War in 1991. This conflict is often cited as a textbook case of a swift, decisive victory. The U.S.-led coalition liberated Kuwait from Iraqi occupation in just a few months, with relatively low casualties. The military fought to win, and it succeeded spectacularly. However, the aftermath revealed the limits of military victory without political resolution. Saddam Hussein remained in power, and the region's instability persisted, eventually leading to the Iraq War a decade later. 2. This brings us to a critical point. Military victory does not always translate into strategic success. Winning battles or even wars on the battlefield is only part of the equation. The political, social, and economic aftermath can determine whether a conflict's objectives are truly achieved. In many cases, the U.S. has won militarily but struggled to secure lasting peace or stability. 10. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan illustrate this challenge vividly. The initial invasions were marked by overwhelming force and rapid success. Yet, the subsequent insurgencies, sectarian violence, and political turmoil turned these conflicts into protracted struggles. Critics argue that the U.S. failed to fight to win because it lacked a coherent strategy for the post-invasion phase. Others contend that the nature of the enemy non-state actors embedded within civilian populations made traditional military victory impossible. Political correctness, as Trump frames it, is often cited as a factor that constrained military operations. This term, however, is loaded and can mean different things to different people. In the military context, it might refer to rules of engagement